Okay, coming up from the environmentals over to the radio stack. We have the bottom radio as our transponder. We always fly with 1200. This corner of for the ident, we may or may not need ident depending on what our tower here in St. Augustine does when we're coming back to the airport. Sometimes they want us to ident, so that's our button there. We have a standard 1 comm in the airplane. We have the active frequency here. We have our standby frequency here. If you hit the flip-flop, it flip-flops the two. We're lucky in that the tower frequency and the ATIS frequency are only a few digits apart. So with the big knob on the right side of the comm, we can change it to 11962 and flip it, and we can pick up our ATIS through our headsets. So that's it. One other feature of this particular radio, as we fly, we will turn and we get cleared the Delta airspace, we will turn our radio volume down. When we do so, and we're coming back to the airport, we have a feature that you can pinch it with your fingers and pull it. Get a little click. You got the click, and then we can start turning the volume up to give us the test squelch. You can hear that over the speaker. So this is what we want to do so that it gives us an idea of where the volume is set with this test squelch. When we get it set correctly, we can push it in and the volume will work normally. On the GPS, we just typically use one button. It's the enter button. And the other one that we might be familiar with is on the scale in, the IN button. Makes a larger scale because it does have traffic avoidance. So by having the scale a little bit finer, it gives us a better reference on our traffic avoidance, which is utmost of importance to us. So we always have our card for our sequence card. We typically, with the early students, we don't use airspeed, we fly on pitch angle. The correct method of maneuvering your airplane is not so much on airspeeds, but on correct pitch angle control. The airplane has a starter button. The airplane also has an emergency and a fuel pump and primer pump. Our propeller control is veneer, where we can unscrew it to the left to reduce our RPMs, okay, or screw it in to the right, increasing our RPM, or we can push the little hat in order to cycle it for the run-up and the before takeoff checklist. The mixture control on the Decathlon, it does not twist, it is push-pull only, and we notice that there's some little threaded serrations here. We will use it full rich for the climb out and for the takeoff and the climb out. But once we're in cruise, we will have the student raise it until about 3/4 of an inch is sticking out of that little aluminum hat, right about at the threaded section. So when you start to see those little serrations or threads, that's leaned adequately. The airplane has a G meter, and the reset button is there, so we can have you reset that throughout the flight anytime you wish. Down here we have our alternate air. It's a fuel injected engine. It's not carb heat, it is actually alternate air. The throttle is here. The trim tab is here. This is the neutral position. The trim knob and the throttle knob are very similar in tactile feedback. As you can see, they are very similar. So pilots will generally get these mixed up occasionally, and you just have to work through that. This is a very pesky trim system, and that is left over from the Aranca Champ back in the day when it was only going 70 miles an hour. This airplane can go up to 200 miles an hour. So the trim friction, the friction on this trim is set really strong. It only slides forward and back. There is no crank or any other mechanical advantage. So in order to hold the trim tab steady, they have to crank down the friction. It is a very, I think a inferior design, but anyway, it is very powerful. It is very stiff. The smallest movement has a lot of power, so it is a pesky trim system. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes of monkeying with it to get it figured out. Our window latch, the window is held open, so we will have the student lift up on that. Once the little latch breaks, the hinge breaks it over center, then we can bring it in where the front latch is latched in that method as such. Okay, that's locked. There is one additional window latch in the back, typically operated in that position for lock. After landing and after we're taxiing, we can open the latches to get some fresh air on our taxi back to the gate. We use Bose headsets. We have a power button and volume control on the Bose, a push and release. It will be flashing green. That tells us the headset is noise canceling is on and operating correctly. The volume controls independent for the left ear and independent for the right ear, and they roll up and down. And so there you can see that it rolled in the up position and back down. To turn off, we can push and hold 1, 2, 3 seconds, release, and the light turns off. And that tells us the noise canceling is turned off. Our headsets are Bose, the noise canceling. The microphone must go on the left side, the way it's hinged and for the reach in front of the lip. We do also have a chin strap on our headsets, held on by Velcro under the chin, and that way when we do inverted flight, the headset will stay secure on our head. Okay. All right, well that pretty much does it on the, one other last thing, we had our fuel selector. This is a gravity fed system. So there's only an off, or an on, which is straight down, and to turn the fuel off is we rotate the fuel selector lever up. That is fuel off. So we will make sure that that is in the down position on our takeoff and before landing checklist. Overhead, we have our fuel gauges. There's one in the wing root on the left, and there's one additional one on the right. Also on the left, we have our magneto switches, our master switch, and our avionics switch. We have some lighting here, which include nav lights, landing lights, and strobe lights. Okay, so we will typically we just leave this to the instructor pilot in the back seat because they're somewhat challenging to get to from the front seat. So that's the overall general cockpit layout in the front, and we have in the back seat for the instructor pilot a throttle, alternate air, and a stick. Of course, the rudder pedals for the back seat is here, and then of course the rudder pedals for the front seat pilot is there. All right, be sure to check out some of our other videos on the decathlon and the extra, and thanks for viewing.